In a second-hand set of dimensions, on an astral plane that was never meant to fly, through wavering star mists, see the Great Atuin. Drifting onwards through space, atop the shell of the world's turtle, are 4 giant elephants, upon whose broad shoulders rests the Discworld. Welcome to Dining Table Discworld. We're reading through the Discworld novels and discussing them at our dining table. Be aware there will be spoilers for the current book and others in the series.
Hello, welcome to Dining Table Discworld. I'm Dave.
I'm Kathy.
And today we are talking about book number, and he quickly checks his list, book number 26 in the Discworld series, which is The Thief of Time. Published in 2001. So, Kathy, do we have a synopsis?
Def's granddaughter Susan is working as a teacher and living a semi-normal life when her grandfather tells her the world is going to end soon. He also tells her there is someone like her, a human with unlikely talents inherited from an anthropomorphic personification, who may be key to what's coming. Meanwhile, Jeremy Clarkson, the most talented member of Ankh-Morpork's Clockmakers Guild, has been commissioned by a mysterious noble to build the Disc's most accurate clock. Lobsang Lud, formerly of the Thieves Guild, and now a surprisingly talented novice of the Secretive History Monks, is sent to be an apprentice to the famous but unorthodox sweeper, Luzi. The auditors are again scheming to stop the messy recklessness of life and get down to some proper accounting, but they are learning about bodies in a very personal way, and they aren't at all prepared. The glass clock, more than a fairy tale, is being built again, and last time it shattered history so badly, the history monks were only just about able to stitch everything back together. It's a race against, time? For the clock to be either created or destroyed. Meanwhile, Death is gathering the other horsemen of the apocalypse for what could be their final gig. But the others aren't so keen. And what of the other one who left before they were famous?
Excellent. So, Kathy, what was your initial thoughts on this?
So, Thief of Time is one that I will have read a little while after it came out, but not so long as a lot of the other ones. We're starting to get to the point where I can kind of start tracking which ones I read. I know I read this, so it came out in 2001. I didn't read it until maybe a couple of years later, because I know I only started reading Pratchett stuff, I think, in 2000. And I know I read Good Omens before this, and I got that in 2002. So, yeah, I probably read it, I guess, maybe in sixth form college. But it's one I remember liking. I generally like... So the Susan ones, I read this and Hogfather most, I think, of the Deaf ones, and Mort as well. But I definitely remember liking it. And yeah, I still do. Again, it's one I was reasonably familiar with, so I remembered a lot of the big picture stuff, and then some of the specific details, maybe not quite so much. But yeah, no, I did like it. I do remember it feeling very interesting. I think it has a slight, now that I've read more things than just the large amount of fantasy and stuff for school, it has a slightly more sort of science fictional feel in some respects, in that I think, there's a little bit more sort of technical stuff and a little bit more like this is how things work, and some behind the scenes stuff, but there's still some stuff that's mythic. And I suppose it's science fiction if the science isn't necessarily like spacey stuff, but more like, obviously time. And I mean, time travel, time stuff is one of my favourite science fictional themes. But it also had, I guess, a certain amount of like psychology and stuff to be being embodied in there as well.
Yes.
If that makes sense. We'll get to it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, this one is one of my favourites, so I've reread it a number of times. And obviously I read it as it came out, so we're at a point where I would be getting them at least that same year as that they came out. And I enjoy it. I enjoy the history monks. I enjoy the general conceit of why the book was written, to go, here's why the chronology timeline doesn't work out for the previous books.
Yes, I guess Pratchett was getting to a point where, the series was so popular and so big with a lot of people, and a lot of those people were probably quite pedantic nerds, which we've all been in our time.
And at that point, they didn't have the option to have a podcast, so they had to do something with their time. That's
true. But there were, obviously websites and things, and that was still perhaps more unregulated than now. Well, regulated isn't quite the right word for what's happening now.
Anyway.
But yes, there'd be a lot of places people would be discussing things, and something like, oh, did you notice this and this? Which, people have always done, but perhaps in a slower form before the internet was quite so big. And then I think, I don't know, but there are some bits where it sort of discusses how you can kind of tell when you know to look for it, the history is broken, and various things are pointed out as examples. And I'm like, was this stuff people said to him?
Yes. I imagine. So I enjoy this book. I mean, there's lots of... The history monks are fun. The 4/5 horsemen are amusing. I just like this book.
Yes, there's quite a bit of stuff in it.
Yes.
Isn't it? And I find this when I read these a lot, actually. I'll sort of think, oh, it's got all these bits in. And then you start reading, and a lot of the bits you remember are actually quite towards the end. And you're like, oh, there's a reasonable amount of build-up. But I think that's always the case, because you sort of remember... Once you know what it is, you don't remember the build-up quite so well, maybe?
Yeah, I think it's... If you actually while the synopsis is quite detailed, in some respects...
Well, I was purposely leaving it a little bit.
Yeah, but the driving plot of the clock...
Yes.
It happens... It's everything that's going on around it.
Yeah. Also, I think this is one because the whole shattering of history thing is explained twice to two different characters in different contexts. And part of that could just be, well, both sets of characters need to know about it, but you don't have to write that down. So I think Pratchett was really trying to make clear, no, this is a whole thing that's happened. Like, maybe he felt the concept was needed more room to breathe than just like... Either Death or Lucy could explain it to Susan or Lobsang. Kind of need both of them to kind of come in on it, maybe look at those different angles. But because I was a bit like, again, because I already know it, I'm like, I know. Yeah. But I suppose, I think that's why it has such an impact. Because when you don't know, you're like, oh, that's quite an interesting idea.
Okay, so where will we starting?
I think we're going to go through some characters.
Yes.
So shall we start with Susan?
Susan, the missing Duchess of Stow-Head, because throughout the entirety of this, the fact that she's a Duchess is not mentioned at all.
I feel like it was only mentioned Hogfather, so there could be that interesting kind of class interaction with her and her employer briefly.
I think Pratchett's just dropping that as a... She's not going to do...
This book isn't as much about class as Hogfather.
No, but I don't think she was ever planned to go back into doing any Duchessing.
No.
So, yeah.
Well, we've had Lady Sybil do it now, and that's now the standard. Susan's not even competing in this anymore.
Susan has talents in other areas.
One of which apparently is teaching.
Yes.
So she's gone from governessing, which is, I guess, like being a private tutor, but a lady, to being an actual class teacher of small children.
Which I think it's, again, we get the juxtaposition of her working in what I imagine would be potentially, at the time, a novel idea of schools.
I've described it as a place that wants to be too permissive.
Yes.
So it's very modern.
Yes, a modern teaching environment where
Pratchett's clearly lampooning.
Yes, and Susan's coming in very much with a more of a classical education basis.
It did feel a bit like a return round, because obviously in the first book she's in Soul Music, she's called into the head mistress's office, and that's much more traditional school, and she's not fully derisive and scornful, because it is still a sort of head teacher pupil thing, but just not that bothered about the whole thing.
No.
And then this is a much more permissive thing, but seems to be this head teacher, who's her boss, does seem to have a similarly sort of difficult reaction to her, which, in fact, I think Susan is quite difficult to deal with if you're an adult.
Yes,
I mean, she's fine for a child. Maybe that's why she's around children so much.
Yes.
She even says herself at one point, like most of the people she knows are like under 8 or something.
Yeah.
But now she knows what she's doing much more, so she does actually kind of use, the voice and the stopping time on her boss a bit, which does feel a little unfair.
I think the voice, definitely, that's kind of, stopping time. But I think the voice is a little bit more...
Well, she uses the time stop to rifle around her office and find the booze and correspondence and things.
But she's just checking up on her, just making sure if so it hasn't gone down too much.
Yeah, she was checking she wasn't day drinking too much at work.
Yes. And I think Susan is there, and she's using her powers to take the class on trips to other places.
It's very practical education.
But obviously it sounds like they are learning.
Well, they get a visit from Death and a visit from Bogeyman, which I think is teaching them not to be too scared of things. She's obviously taking people to battles and stuff. Because the thing is, she's doing stuff where you're not quite... It's a little bit like Magic School Bus type thing. Except you don't have to bus, the classroom just kind of moves. And it's never sure if what she's showing them is real or an emanation or something.
I think the idea is it's that kind of grey area. It's not... Is it real? The classroom walls seem to still be there, and the stationery cupboard...
The shape of the classroom.
The stationery cupboard is still there, but...
they're also in Quirm.
Something gets left behind in the...
some ink, because when the Death Rats knocks the ink pot over, so the ink is on the floor, but the rains... Oh, it's when they're in Genoa. Yeah. The rains will wash it away in a few hours.
There's a splash of ink on the floor.
And that's when she's teaching them about different time zones. And at first you're like, how would there be time zones on a disc? But then it's explained that the speed of light is only 600 miles an hour. And that means the time is different. And I'm like, let's not think too much about that.
Well, it's come from right at the start.
Oh, yeah,
where he talks about, you know,
the slow sunlight build up.
Yeah.
I know it's a Discworld thing. I just think that giving it a speed seems weird, but I also don't know enough about that sort of thing to think about too closely. Because the sun's still moving around. We'll just not think about it too much. Like how they have the shortest night for Hogfather, but it's a disc. We'll not think about it. I'm not saying it can't work. I just don't know enough about it, and everything I know about with our stuff is all spheres.
Yes.
So
well, it's also, if you manipulate the speed of light, that affects other things. So
sure, yeah, we'll not think about it too much. We've got weird time stuff to be confused by.
Yeah. So yeah, so Susan is living her best life as a school teacher.
She was totally her best life.
Okay, she's living a life.
I think she's kind of where she wants to be with that, but it's clear she doesn't exactly have friends that are adults. And I mean, I'm not sure you can count children you teach as being. I don't think she's thinking of them as friends either. She's not. No. She's not that kind of teacher. That's more what head teacher's like.
She's treating herself to one fancy box of chocolates. But the lower end fancy box of chocolates. Was
it like a month? Or?
Yeah.
She says something at one point about most people she knows are under 8. There's this idea of like, she says at one point, or at some point, somebody's got to be the person that tips the wee out of the shoe. Which feels very like the witches. And I almost feel like Susan needs more witches in her life, which will kind of get to that interaction. But there's also the fact that she obviously has a relationship with her grandfather, but it's not as bad as it was at the beginning of Hogfather.
No.
And again, we don't know why it was like that, what happened. Like, there's this gap between Salt Music and Hogfather where it feels like something happened, or maybe she just came to a realisation. But yeah, she still has a bit of a thing where she's a bit like, oh, all right then, you know. Yeah. She seems weirdly down on the death of rats.
I think it's because...
compared to the Raven, I always like the death of rats more than the Raven.
I think potentially because the death of rats gets used as the messenger. He turns up when rather than death coming and visiting.
At least sending Binky.
But, you know, it ends up... The death of rats ends up turning up to tell her that grandfather wants a word.
Yeah. But I mean, he obviously came to the classroom one time, you know, and that's the thing. Her boss is quite concerned that the children are, no trips have been allowed, but the children are coming out with all these sort of things, and she's just like the imagination of children. Yes, but she's also obviously not very sentimental, so she's obviously quite matter of fact, and she teaches the children. There's the whole looking things at the business eye and the lazy eye. So lazy eye is what you want to think, and that concept comes up later. But she shows them like a cardboard clock and she says, "What's this?" And someone's like, "A clock," and she's like, looking, and then one was like, it's cardboard made to look like a clock, like looking at things as they actually are. And again, that comes in later when she looks at history. That strikes me as, again, a little bit like in other books when, like, Magrat was told to, like, look at someone not as a woman but as a witch.
Yeah.
Varens, wasn't it? So yeah, I think Susan's got some of these hallmarks, and it's clear in the book there's like a community of anthropomorphic personification people who she knows because she is part of that community, and they are about the place. Yeah. We still don't know what Old Man Trouble is.
No, we don't find.
Other than, I guess, Trouble. And something about tunefulness. Anyway, I think the Soul Cake Duck gets briefly mentioned, and obviously there's the Horsemith and Ronnie, which we'll get to. I mean, at least Susan is on the cover of this book, although it does show her as a teacher. So it sort of shows her as like surrounded by children in a classroom, but she's also wearing a robe and holding a scythe. Is this the last Josh Kirby cover?
Believe so.
What's the next book?
The Last Hero.
Ah, yeah. And then after that, is it Night Watch pretty soon?
Amazing Morris and then Night Watch.
Oh, okay. But those were both Paul Kidby.
Yes.
I know they're different names, but the fact that they are both one-syllable men's names and then there's a K and a B at the end, I always have to just think a moment. But yes, so this is the last. I mean, of obviously us having these kind of more original editions, it's kind of the last. But again, Susan is never front and centre in her own covers for these, is she? No. She's always. I mean, she isn't even in Soul Music. She's just kind of in the background in this and Hogfather. But she's kind of getting the same weight as the Abbot there.
Yeah, it's a bit of an odd.
Like, and the Horseman. Right, did you want anything else to say on Susan?
I mean, Susan is Susan.
I mean, when her grandfather calls her, because he's telling her that, you know, the end is coming, and it explains about the history thing and the glass clock, and she's like, that's just the story, it was in the storybook. And she's like, oh, but the story never really made a lot of sense. But the children got quite obsessed about it. It's like, yeah, because there's like echoes of this thing that happened before. Again, this idea that there's something that happened before, it got kind of taken out of history, but there's still echoes of the thing in there. Death says it's the Order's obstetrics again, and she's a bit, and he's like, oh, they found a loophole. She's like, why don't you find a loophole? And I'm saying, like, Susan, you are the loophole. Has she not realised this yet? I suppose it's hard to turn that kind of eye on yourself. It's a bit like, Susan, you are Death's loophole.
Yes, you are the one that's going to, go.
You're the human that can interfere, but has more than human powers. So, yeah. I imagine telling her that would just make her more intractable. So.
Yes. So
it's probably important she doesn't realise.
I mean, we'll touch on Susan across the book as well, because she's obviously throughout and interacts with various characters. So this is a starting point, but we'll mention other things.
I think if we go then to Lutzi and the History Monks.
Yes, so this is the second appearance of Lutzi we've seen. The first one being in Small Gods.
Well, he seemed kind of different.
Yeah, so obviously this is an adaptation of an idea that Pratchett had in Small Gods, the idea of events, capital E, need to be witnessed. And so that's what Lutzi was doing in Small Gods.
So that's what he was supposed to be doing?
Well, yes. He was supposed to be witnessing events, and then he kind of...
got involved?
Well, just made sure that something broke or didn't break when it's supposed to.
Yes, that's true. Yes, I almost forgot about that. I was thinking more about him comforting brother.
But no, he
did break the thing so the Iron Turtle didn't get to the place. Is that what happened?
Yes.
I remember that book in part. I mean, so there is a direct callback now, but it briefly mentions... I mean, loads of things is mentioned that Lutzi's done, or supposed to have done, much which I guess one wouldn't know about because it's all very secretive. The Small Gods thing is specifically mentioned, and the abbot says something about being, specifically being where you were told not to be and doing something when you were told not to do anything. And Lucy's like, well, when you're the man on the ground, which I think is his whole thing.
Yes. Lutzi is this very old, so 8,000 years old.
No, I think it's more like 800. 1,000, were they? Am I thinking of the Doctor? Maybe not.
Anyway, he's very old.
He's very
old. Many lifetimes old.
Well, I mean, it's all one lifetime for him. It's the abbot who's...
Yeah, okay, but still many human lives.
I mean, the thing with the History Monks is because was there much description of Lutzi in Small Gods? Because on the cover, he's drawn like a Western monk. Like brown robes, he's got a beard, and he's got a broom, which is how you know it's him. But this is obviously very, very much Buddhist monk style territory.
I think, yeah, that's...
And I can't remember how much of a description there was of him. He was just this guy that was there. But I think I can't remember if I read Small Gods before or after this.
I mean, to be honest, I imagine he just blended in with what he.
Yeah, well, I suppose he would have just looked like an omni, because again, it was in a monastic citadel, so I suppose he would have just looked monkish, because everyone was monkish. So yeah, we have another like monkish environment. Omnia is very kind of Middle Eastern, although I don't know what the monastic stuff there looks like so much. But it's that. But this is very. Well, it's very Tibetan. That's what Pratchett's doing. So you've got Oidong, which I'm sure is a reference to something. This valley of the History Monks, and they follow the teachings of Wen, the eternally surprised, Wen, W-E-N.
Yes,
Wen, who had a revelation about time. And then
how time is always, everything is just being destroyed and recreated in every instant. So there is, yesterday doesn't exist.
Or even a moment ago. So it's the idea that the shortest time that exists, which is just like so small we can't really perceive it, that the universe has been constantly destroyed and created in each of those, which is, and again I think that's explained to a character at one point and they're like, I feel quite weird now. It's like, you think about too much, which I think is, and we do get throughout the books bits where you kind of have a flashback to something where Wen's talking to his rather foolish sidekick Clodpool, which is clearly close to being Clodpole, but who's again he's kind of like his Baldric.
I don't think his name is Apprentice, but
yes, and then but Wen figures out how to pull time and move it around, so he pulls some time from mountains and then puts it into like some cherry seeds that then suddenly turn into a tree. So it's that you can manipulate time, which then the History Monks are taken on. They have things called procrastinators, which are basically these great prayer cylinders.
Prayer cylinders.
Yeah. But the point is they're moving time around, and yes, the History Monks do that. And then you've got the abbot, who I believe is the one that was collected by Mort.
I think is yes.
It? The thing with that is, I was going to say it doesn't make sense with time, but I guess it's Oidog, so it wouldn't. Mort was 16 when he collected the abbot.
Yes.
And then he was 32 when he died.
Yes.
And Susan was 14 then. And Susan's now something, so it doesn't quite make sense that the abbot is now a young toddler.
He could have had an unfortunate accident.
That is true, yes.
Not an unfortunate accident with the smoking boots, just an unfortunate accident. that sometimes happens.
So the point is that the abbot's always reincarnating.
The abbot hasn't
very much a reference to the Dalai Lama.
The abbot hasn't managed to get a handle on one lifetime, extending his existence in one life, so he has to do it the old-fashioned way. I think it's described.
Yes, which, I mean, it's very clear that the abbot is somebody that almost probably the only person Lutzi actually respects in the hierarchy, and there's a lot of times when there'll be something and he'll be asked, oh, why this or how this, and he's like, oh, I know, the abbot's want to figure that out.
Yeah.
So the abbot's clear that the brain's the whole thing, but it's clear what kind of bureaucracy and the hierarchy is built up around him.
Yes.
But again, part of the time, he's either a small child or a very old man. Yeah. And I think there's the thing about the teeth coming and going. He always has trouble with his teeth. They're either coming or going.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you've got this sort of setup where you have this entirely male monastery.
Yep.
And it says at one point in the text, they didn't consider themselves single sex. It just wanted to occur to them that women existed. And it's like, yes, that's... It's like, well... But you've got this entirely male thing that has at least part of it must be dedicated to caring for a child.
Yes.
At least some of the, like every maybe 100 years or so, maybe shorter depending on what happened with this. Yeah. Again, I think the point is, when was that? As this book describes, if nothing needs to be necessarily before or after any other thing.
Yes.
That's kind of the point. Although, saying that, it did once mention a female character, because Lucy said, I'm glad the Abbott's on solids. It's always a bit embarrassing when the wet nurse is there.
Yeah.
So they do understand women are needed for something.
Yes.
It's not quite like that place in Greece where there's that island in Greece that's monastic and only males can go there. I don't think Pratchett's necessarily doing much with it, but it occurred to me, it's interesting, you got this sort of thing where they're a bit like all childcare, and there's this one guy who kind of carries the abbot around, looks after him, and it seems a bit like that guy's a bit annoying, but the abbot kind of... Because the thing with the abbot is he'll be talking really sensibly, like, Lucy, why are we doing this? And suddenly he'll be like, Bick it! And it's like he kind of flashes between being a small child and being the 9,000-year-old abbot who's figured all this out, which kind of feels a little bit more like possession or something.
Yeah.
Now that I think about it. But it's a bit of an odd thing. I suppose it might go into that sort of like the mind and the body sort of thing. Because clearly he can apparently talk when he's a baby for at least some of the time. But yes, it's the fact that he kind of seems to attack this one guy a little bit more. Like, it's not just random. This is the guy he hits with a wooden yak.
Yeah. So the history monks are there as... when we see Lucy the first time in Small Gods, the implication is that they are there to make sure that time and history goes as it's supposed to. But during Thief of Time, they're just happy that history and time is going at all.
Yes.
After the events of the first clock.
So the glass clock of somewhere in Ubervold called Bad Shoe Shine.
Yes.
Which I'm pretty sure is the joke just bad shoe shine. Yeah. But I think that's how you'd say it. It's written more Germanic looking. So Lutzi is this very legendary figure, novices are told about him, people hear about him, but he's not anywhere in the hierarchy. He's not even novice, he's just a sweeper.
I mean, senior sweeper.
Yes, he's the chief sweeper. And so he's obviously gone out in history and done all this stuff, and people like talk about him, and there's also legends of his fighting prowess, and there's also the thing about Rule 1.
Rule 1, and that comes from, that's a classic from Japanese martial arts films.
I don't think it's just Japanese stuff.
Just general martial arts films. Kung Fu. Which is basically, don't underestimate your opponent, especially when he's a small man.
It's like he's a little old man who's always smiling.
Yeah.
And then the sweeping thing is a bit like, because there's lots of, well, how do you get to this place? It's like, well, everything needs sweeping, and nobody. Again, the idea that the servant class are not noticed by those they serve, and so Lutzi can get into places because sweeping.
It was mentioned when because he assassinated. Or not assassinated.
He's present when a warlord choked on
a chicken bone.
Yeah.
And it was like, how did you get in? It was like a siege.
There was a siege and an army couldn't get in. Yeah, it's like, well, no, but a sweeper can. Yeah. He's going to stop a little man with a broom.
Yeah.
Yes. So there's various things about his exploits. Some of the novices will be mean to the sweepers.
Yeah.
And then they get in trouble. Some of them went to his garden, kicked over a shrine, and then they get told, have you heard of Lutzi who? And they name off all the stuff and yeah, and then one kid suddenly realises and and then runs off, and the fact is they're punished, and then one lad basically becomes a sweeper for the rest of his life, and so Lutzi's this very unorthodox figure within this unusual monk order. He's done all this stuff but stays out of the hierarchy, which he clearly dislikes. In fact, sometimes he says, oh, well, the abbot's having to deal with all that, so we can go do the proper stuff. At the start, the reason he's given... So, Lobsang Lud is a kid who was found in Ankh-Morpork. He was one of the foundlings at the Thieves Guild.
Which is why he's a Lud.
Yeah. But he did a very advanced time-slicing thing, and then...
He starts with a coyote,
Yes.
Basically, he slipped off a roof and was falling to his death, and he instinctively stopped his personal time.
Yes.
So that he was stopped falling.
And then the history monks, I think, have people around the place who are like out in history looking at stuff, I guess doing field work. And one of them spots this and says, right, well, we're going to just take you somewhere. I kind of guess like what Professor Xavier does with
pretty much, yes. I mean, very much so. They even wiped the history of him being at the Thieves Guild.
Is that what Professor Xavier does?
Only to some people.
Yeah, well, that's an iffy
we're not
institution also. So he's one of the novices, but they're saying he's not doing well as novice, but they can't ever catch these. Like, he's always ahead of everyone, but he's not listening to his lessons. Also, he keeps stealing things, and they can never catch him stealing things. And the idea is he's slicing time to do it.
The idea is he knows everything already,
which makes him hard to teach.
But he doesn't
know how he knows it,
or like he's consciously know it.
Well, it's like they said, every time it's like he's obviously not paying attention. As soon as you ask him a question, he can answer it. So he's basically trouble in the kind of novice.
But they don't want to throw him out because he's
he's obviously incredibly talented. So a couple of these sort of senior monks are like, well, maybe we'll send a problem to another problem, because these people clearly don't like Lutzi. So they're like, right, you're going to go and apprentice with the sweeper now. And then what happens is that Lutzi starts showing Lobsang various things he wouldn't normally see, and it's kind of that thing. And again, it's like, I'm obviously Karate Kid's the one that I'm familiar with, where you start out with this guy's always really good, and it's like, well, you're going to do a load of menial stuff first. And it's like, okay, but like, I'm bored now, and what is this? Clearly there's something more. The other thing with Lutzi is that he has his way.
Yes.
Which is not the way of the rest of the
No, it's a very different way to... He's gone out in the world and found his own way.
He's found the way of Mrs. Cosmopolite, who we may recall from Moving Pictures as being the wardrobe mistress, and we may recall from, I can't remember which other book it is, but certainly one where she thought that people were peeping in at her windows or something.
Yes.
And I think this bit comes from what I think is a footnote, probably... Is it Witches Abroad, where Magrat starts getting pamphlets about enlightenment and stuff? Yeah. I think it's that, because it says something about, like, wisdom always feels better when it's further away.
Yeah.
And it makes some comment about monks turning up at the home of Mrs. Cosmopolite to watch her ways. But it kind of acts a bit like she's sort of like sweeping away with a broom.
Yeah, I think the idea is that
but that's clearly a seed for this.
Lutzi had gone to Ankh-Morpork and was looking for somewhere to stay, and she said, and I'm paraphrasing, it's just like, I come in, I haven't got all day, or so. She said something very profound from when the Eternally Surprised had said. So she said something very profound from a point of view of that.
Somebody who studied the way of Wen.
To be honest, it was a very standard.
Yeah, so it's like, I haven't got all day, and then at one point he says something like, "Oh well, if I don't need a bed, then you don't have to charge me too much," and she's like, Mr. Z, I was not born yesterday. Yes. And that's what Wen said. He's like, truly, I was not born yesterday. And it's just this idea that Lutzi will then come out with all these things that basically phrases a little old lady would say. And that irritates Lobsang, because he's a bit like, but that's just what grannies say. And I think what Pratchett's saying is there's much wisdom in what grandmothers say. It's all this very common sense stuff. But again, it's this idea that wisdom is different further away. It's not all this temporal, spiritual, philosophical Eastern tinge. The Ramtops apparently have a bit in the middle that's sort of Central Asia, Himalayas. But actually there is a lot of sense in what's being said, and he has a little book and he'll flick through and he'll say certain bits and pieces. But something more strong is like, do you want to otters as you would have them do unto you? It's like, Lucy had always been a little confused by that one, but he had resolved to, or he'd kept away from marine mammals and they'd largely kept away from him. So it just means that Pratchett can kind of pepper the book with these kind of little, like, these sort of sayings, but they're applied in such an interesting way.
Yeah, and I think Lutzi is a fun character. He fulfills the Eastern monk stereotype, the master who you don't mess with because he knows more than you do, and many forms of martial arts.
But he's also very, like, humble with, like, he's purposely very humble. So, which again, I guess is a kind of aesthetic thing as well. Yeah. A little bit. He lives this very humble life. I guess kind of Buddhist without me knowing much about it. So everything goes a bit wrong. And then, so they go into the mandala room. Yeah. Now, I don't know enough about this to really comment on it, but the idea is you've got the pouring sands, and that kind of maps out stuff to do with time. Yeah. And then Lobsang looks at it and instinctively understands how it works. And then it reacts to him, and that's when he has the flashback to being in Ankh-Morpork, and then it all goes a bit weird.
Flashback.
Well, let's call it that. But
timey-wimey.
Well, yeah, but flashback, that you know, it's fine. Fine, a very literal flashback.
Yes.
And then Lucy says, we'll get you away from that, explains to him how it works. But there's the idea that you can kind of see temporal stuff, what's happening with history there. And Lobsang's like, oh yeah, I remembered that you would tell me that. And he's like, good word.
Yeah.
And then he takes him to the Hall of the Procrastinators, which is basically this massive cavern with these, massive stone cylinders spinning and basically grinding out
some of them
time. There's I think most of the big ones are stone, which is grinding out loads of time. And then you have like smaller wooden ones and a tiny little chalk one that's like seconds. So it sort of shows us this interesting stuff in the valley, and also the thing with Oidong is it's the same day all the time.
Yes.
So it's one perfect day. So it's always the same temperature. Pratchett does it a couple of times. The flight of birds sort of flies out, and it always does the same thing. So it's a little bit like Groundhog Day, and it's this idea of the same bit of time being used over and over again, which again kind of like pyramids.
Yeah.
But here they seem to have organised it nicely. Pyramids is not really mentioned. Jelly Baby's not really mentioned this. I wonder if it didn't survive the glass clock thing, because it's mentioned occasionally, but it's mentioned less and less.
Well, I think, Jelly Baby.
It's a similar conceit, but it's less grim in this. It's more nice.
Reusing the date.
Yeah,
I mean that would have definitely been on the History Monk's radar.
Well, yeah, but when you're stitching things together, is that like you have to cut something loose? When I started reading this, I also read a little bit of Darwin Jones's The Tale of Time City, which is a similar thing of like, this is a place outside of time and history, which just kind of reuses the bit it's on. And you're like, okay. But then when they go into the field, they first go by Q.
Yes. Which is once again, we are pulling from James Bond with a little monk who has lots of gadgets, including a begging bowl. But when you throw it, blades come out of it, and then it sticks into things and explodes.
Yes.
Because why not? And
he's got all these like dummies that are obviously being used for dangerous stuff. So he's right down at the edge of the valley, I think, where he's out of the way and not a problem.
Lucy and Lobsang get sent out into the field.
Well, because it's all gone a bit wrong, hasn't it?
Yes.
So they know the glass clock is back.
And there's obviously a connection between Lobsang and the clock.
Well, that's what Lucy's hiding. Yeah. So Lobsang can kind of feel something's up, and then all the procrastinators cut loose. And then the monks who work down in the cavern where the procrastinators are all working. There's a lot of stuff about like having to oil things with butter and stuff. And then there's grease it. That's grease, oil, cooking, but not cooking in this case.
No.
And then there's stuff that things go red when they're. They go red when they're taking time and blue when they're losing time or something? I can't remember. It's explained very well in the book. And there's like
it's red shift and blue shift.
Yeah, you explain that, and I know that.
Quantum. Well, it's
don't say quantum. I don't know. I don't know.
When you're travelling near the speed of light, and obviously we have time dilation, because the wavelengths of the light changes. So behind you, the wavelengths stretch. So behind you looks blue, and when you're going forwards, the wavelengths are compressing.
Is that referenced later with the clock as well?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know that. I have a history degree, not like physics, and I know this kind of has both things there. I don't have a physics
degree either.
But you've studied physics more than me. I personally stopped doing science at GCSE. So it's all gone wrong. Everything's cut loose. And what happens is the guy who's operating the kind of board, who I guess is like the floor supervisor.
Yeah,
is that the word? He's been turned into a pile of dust because he got like thousands of years all in one go, and then Lobsang just sort of instinctively makes it out. And they're honestly a bit like, okay, this happens very rarely. This is a big emergency. Well, if you lose a few thousand years, most people who are new to this would do. And Lobsang balances it down to the second. And Lucy is like, who is this and what is happening?
Yes.
But he doesn't want the whole hierarchy to get involved. So when they're a bit like, the glass clock. Lucy was the person who almost stopped the glass clock the last time.
That's why
it's his white whale.
Yeah, that's why he's so hell bent on getting out there, stopping it, because he was at the door of the castle when time shattered the first time.
Yes, because what the glass clock did was it, rather than measuring time, which the clock's supposed to do, it broke time because a part of it was outside of the universe.
So the glass clock, when it's built correctly, and what happens in the book is it stops time because part of it is outside time, and so therefore it can't tick, and therefore everything stops.
it should be pointed out here, so there's an interesting typeface thing. Obviously, Discworld books don't have chapters for the most part, or not at this stage, and haven't until a bit later. But obviously there's plenty of, like, sort of scene breaks.
Yeah.
Every single one in this book has tick as the thing in between. So it just says tick every time until the clock stops time and goes tick.
In the original one, it stopped, but then because it wasn't 100% glass, they had to put a metal spring.
Metal spring, yeah.
The spring breaks, the clock breaks, and time breaks with
Time
it.
shattered. Yes, it took, Def describes this to Susan, it took the equivalent of 500 years of stored time for the history monks to basically stitch history back together like patchworking something. And you have to understand that if you cut something up and then sew it together, there's a seam allowance, so there's less of it now. It won't cover the same amount because you've had to stitch it together.
Yeah.
So the point is that they had to basically stitch it together, and they're like, we can't let this happen again because there's not enough time left for history to happen in if we lose any more of it. And the idea that Oidon was then, they must have enough stored up to have done that. And that's where it gets the interesting stuff. So when Def sort of describes this to Susan, she looks at history with her business eye. And again, Lobsang has this explained to him kind of gradually by Luzi, partly in the monastery and partly when they're travelling towards Ankh-Morpork. Because the other thing that Luzi does, as well as kind of hiding Lobsang's, just how special Lobsang is from the monks, he also tells them, oh, no, it'll be Ubervold, it's always Ubervold, they're always got these mad scientists doing this stuff. But he's like, nah, it's Ankh-Morpork.
It's fair enough.
But the thing is, the reason Luzi couldn't do it before was because you couldn't tell where anything was happening. So he was in the right valley, but there are so many castles. Which castle was it? Again, mad scientist, 10 a penny. But Lobsang can sense where something is. He knows where he's supposed to be. And Luzi is like, obviously incredibly freaked out by that, but it's real useful.
Yes.
So
that helps.
And he's like, you shouldn't be able to do that, but you know what?
We're going to roll with it.
Yeah. So Susan looks at stuff with her business eyes, and it says, the famous philosophers of Ephebe either lived a long time or inherited their names, or was extra history stitched in. Omnia was a mess. 2 centuries seemed to be folded into one, which is interesting.
Yes.
Coombe Valley, a famous dwarf and troll battle. And it's like, but how many of those battles had there actually been? There seemed like different generations went round the disaster again and again, shouting, remember Coombe Valley. And then we do get this one bit that's one of the really good bits people quite often quote separately as a good example of Pratchett, which is just a footnote. Every society needs a cry like that, but only in very few do they come out with the completely unvarnished truth, which is, remember the atrocity committed against us last time that will excuse the atrocity we're about to commit today, and so on. Hurrah! Which feels continuously relevant.
Yes. Anyway, so who do we have next on the... Because I think we could keep going for a while here, and some things will loop through as
yes. So we've got Jeremy. Jeremy Clockson, a foundling of the left at the Clockmakers Guild.
And you know, sounds very much like a British TV personality when you say it out loud.
Oh God, I didn't even think of that.
No,
yeah. Hopefully it wasn't. Oh, no.
I don't think it is, because there's not enough. And at the time, yes, he would have been on TV.
He absolutely was on TV.
But I don't think there's enough of a... It's not really a reference. I just think it's just one.
I hadn't
I think the name sounds the same, but Jeremy is this genius clockmaker.
I was about to say savant, which I think was the word people used to use, which feels relevant.
Who is all about clocks and keeping perfect time. He keeps a shop, and all the clocks in it are perfect. They all chime at once.
And he's often brought in to consult with the Clockmakers Guild.
And he's a member in good standing, but away from the rest of the guild.
There was clearly an incident.
Yes.
And they're just very keen. Like, somebody comes around once a week to just check he's taking his meds. It's like, is he on his meds?
Yeah.
So Jeremy's obviously incredibly strongly, like, autistic coded.
I think that's definitely... Well, you know, clocks and times... is his specialist, you know.
Oh, yeah. It kind of goes beyond the special interest, because there's this whole thing, they're almost, again, the Clockmakers Guild, a little bit wary that he doesn't seem to have any other interest. In fact, when he says he's working on crystals, the man who visits each week from the Clockmakers Guild and checks if his medicine is being taken, though not as discreetly as he thinks, is like, oh, it's always good to have a hobby. Yes, something else. That'd be lovely, yeah. Yeah, so Jeremy's obviously one of these people that, and again, it's that kind of idea that somebody's a genius, so they're allowed to get away with certain things, which there's something about how genius is always allowed some leeway once the hammer has been pried from its hands and the blood has been cleared up. And part of it's like, well, That, I think that depends on who it is.
Yeah.
Let's face it.
Yeah.
Genius in many a person is fine to be dismissed, and genius in certain other people is allowed anything.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as simple as that, but I sort of see the point that Pratchett is making.
No. So Jeremy, his entry into the story is that he is engaged by a interesting lady.
Lady Maria?
Yeah, Lejeune.
Lejeune.
There we go. Who's basically paying him to recreate the glass clock in material. So some sort of a patron. Lady Lejeune is actually an auditor who has manifested a physical body for reasons that will be mentioned later, and sets him off to start building the clock.
I mean, the idea is he's been told, you know what, you want a lot of money to get whatever materials you need to make the thing you've always dreamed of making.
Yes.
Which is an entirely accurate clock. And he's like, yes.
Which is also,
yes.
And he definitely starts dreaming about it after meeting her.
Yeah.
Because they keep dropping dreams of the glass clock into his head.
Oh, okay. I forgot they're doing that.
Yeah, so that he dreams the clock.
Yeah.
And then he wants to build it using crystals.
Yeah, because it has to be entirely glass. It can't be any metal.
And
quite why glass was better than metal, I don't know, but we'll just go with it.
No, I mean crystals is playing off the whole quartz watch.
Oh yeah.
Thing.
Yeah.
So he makes a grandfather clock.
Yes, I mean he's also she sends him an eagle.
Yes.
To help him out, which is what you need when you're doing something ambitious.
Well, or they come with a lot of highly broad skill sets on, and this eagle is particularly important because he has his grandfather's hands, and his grandfather worked on the original clock.
Yes, and again, you might be like, we don't know what the lifespan of an eagle is. It's probably more than just a human, but I guess maybe less than a dwarf.
Yeah,
I don't really understand how trolls are. But on the other hand, when anything happens about the glass clock is sort of irrelevant, which I think various characters realise.
Yeah. So yes, Eagle comes in, and he's used to working with madmen. But he's actually gets a bit scared of Jeremy because I think he's not mad in the right way.
Well, no, because he says, oh, well, no, he's sane. So, this is the first time I've worked for a sane person. This is what sanity must be. This very ordered, very careful, everything exactly where it should be. Which I think just shows that Eagle had masters before where he did the tidying up and everything was a bit slapdash and everywhere.
Right, so it's the classic heap of old mad science.
Yeah. But the idea is that, yes, Jeremy is just has a different form of, I say insanity, that sounds a bit not great, but a different form of being different.
Yeah.
And, at one point, Eagle also thinks, oh, well, if sticking screws up your nose is madness, then having them carefully arranged in exact things by size must be sanity. Yeah. Wait, is it? I mean, I don't think Eagle's afraid of Jeremy, though, because he wants to... He's helping Jeremy. I think he quite likes Jeremy. And again, he's used to people who are unorthodox. That's the whole Eagle thing. You don't contradict the master. And he actually sees Jeremy... Because the guy from the Clockmaker's Guild asks him if Jeremy's taking his medicine. It's like, yes, I see him pour out a spoon every day. Yes. What he doesn't say is he then tips it down the sink because the medicine stopped him thinking. Which feels a little bit like it's a reference to how various meds work.
Yeah.
I don't know, is it a little bit problematic to sort of do it like this? I'm not sure. But no. I know some people have said, that sort of like being on meds does make you feel very different. I think the idea here is that, it was stopping him from achieving his sort of true genius and clarity of thought. And it's like, but he is like doing something that is going to destroy the universe. And I think he's even told, because Eagle kind of tells him, because his family have said about the glass clock, it's one of those kind of remnants that remain.
Well, because Eagle remembers creating the clock.
Well, his hands do.
But his grandfather tells him about the so that the grandfather remembers creating the clock, but the clock was never made.
Yeah.
As far as everyone else is concerned, the scientist was doing something else. He never made the clock.
Yes, because they couldn't, the history monks couldn't take it out of that Eagle's mind, and so now you've got his grandson Eagle, who has the same hands, and I think sometimes feels like his hands can remember, but increasingly Eagle actually is afraid of and suspicious of Lady Lejeune.
Yeah, and
it's interesting because Eagle's kind of pulled in two directions a bit here because he starts to become a bit afraid of the clock.
Which is fair, because it starts being very strange.
There's even sort of suggestion that, it could stop time and do something to time. And Jeremy's like, well, no, that's silly. It's a clock. It just measures things. And it's like, don't you think people are saying that for a reason? But Eagle's still working, so that's what you do. You do what the master says, even if you don't like it. And he becomes suspicious of Lady Lejeune because stuff keeps going wrong each time she visits.
Yeah.
And then he starts following her and realises she's not like a regular person, but not in a... And, eagles are famously non-judgmental.
Yes.
They'll serve whoever. But he also realises the stuff like, she must have engaged him at the Eagle place in Ubervold, but the same day was somehow an Ankh-Morpork, because he arrived like the day after, and that's not how that... Because he posted himself.
Yes. Yeah, he engaged his services and then managed to get to Ankh-Morpork to engage Jeremy's services within 24 hours, and that's not possible.
No, because he had to email himself on the fastest coach. So yes, but Eagle's quite a fun character because he's building the clock and he's making it successful, and he doesn't like how Lady Lejeune keeps, like, whenever she's there something seems to go a bit wrong, but he can't ever point it at her. But equally, he also doesn't like it. But he's doing what he's supposed to. And again, the thing for starting is that they need lightning, and you can't harness lightning the same way in Ankh-Morpork. The Eagles can harness tame lightning, but they can't. But you need a proper thunderstorm to actually start it. And he's like, "Oh, you don't get us down on the plains, not like up in the mountains in Ubervold."
No. Where you just need to look out your window, going, "Oh, if it's a dark and stormy night, there we go." It's.
Did we want to say anything about Lady Lejeune and then the auditors?
We should do, yes. This is another book driven by the auditors, who are once again getting fed up with the messy humans and
just life in general.
Yeah, and want to just have everything frozen.
What's interesting here is there seems to be a lot of them, because in Hogfather it seems to be very much a small group, or you only ever saw a few at a time, and they were trying to act through human agents. And that seemed to be their initial play, that they were trying not to be noticed, which I think Def told Susan. So it seems a bit like, well, who's noticing? And I've certainly heard the theory that, like, maybe that was a breakaway group of auditors that are doing something. And because then when they become desperate at the end, they actually manifest as the kind of dog shapes that chase the boar version of the Hogfather. But here it sort of seems like they're all involved, and they don't... And they say stuff about trying to get humans to do things, but humans don't want to do things the way they want. Humans respond to other humans, so they get one of their number to incarnate, basically, as a noblewoman. And at first they're getting her to discarnate and incarnate, which is how she's able to be in two places within like a day. But then she says to them, no, it hurts too much. And they're like, oh, interesting, pain. Can you tell us about it? And then she says, I'll just stay human all the time. Like, well, we don't like that. But so you've got basically Lady Myria Lejeune. And Susan points out later that Myria is kind of like myriad and Lejeune is like legion. Because the point is, because again, it's the whole thing, they don't like individuality because then you can die. But she's the first one who does it, and she does that for quite a while. And it's so fascinating because she's a person who's become a person fully fledged after existing for billions of years as not a person. And there's just all this stuff she describes about having a brain and a body. And I mean, Pratchett has said before, like, things are quite often act according to the shape they're in.
Yes.
That's been a bit of a theme, but this is where I think it really comes out and he really goes right in there with it.
Yes, because she's literally, she finds that, obviously having a body suddenly finds needs and wants that she previously, never had. They talk about feeding and eating. And they and she can still, as an auditor with abilities, just absorb.
She can just create the nutrients.
But the body doesn't like it.
The body doesn't know it's eaten. Yeah. Because the whole thing is, if you look at babies, you have to feed them different foods and you have to get them to chew and stuff, because that actually then means that their vocal, the ability to talk is developed and things. So there's various things that, like, you don't have to think are related but are within a body, which we as humans have discovered over time. And again, we're born to it, but she's had, billions of years of existence and suddenly this. And she always talks about stuff like the dark behind the eyes. And the idea that a human is not a single creature exactly. I mean, obviously, the auditors don't like individuality, but there's all these voices that are there. And it's also the fact that she realises the other auditors can't tell what she's thinking.
Yeah.
And it actually says they've looked at human brains, they've watched them, but they can't understand what that means.
They know exactly what's happening in it, but she goes and looks at, she goes to art galleries, and she goes and. But
she also has, and again, she also has massive sensory overload.
Yes.
Because she eats a dry bit of toast and it almost kills her, because once her body doesn't respond to that, because just the sensation, like the texture and the taste and all of that, it's too much for her, really. So she learns that the senses are wired directly into the body, and the brain does its own thinking. So that's stuff that I guess we'd call like subconscious or unconscious or like instinctual stuff. And sometimes it disagrees with itself. She says humans weren't individuals; they were each one a committee. kind of idea of lizard brain and monkey brain, and she talks about these like dark red voices that are in there. And again, it's not the actual voices, but I think it's instinct and I think what's sometimes called race memory. I think that's probably a better word for that, which I can't recall now. But the thing is that much though she's doing this, she doesn't want it to end.
Yes.
And so that's why she keeps sabotaging the clock, because they know that when the clock stops time, like, that'll be it. And she's a bit like, no, I want to, again, the instinct to live
yes,
is now in there, because she now lives.
Yes. I mean, they have to, the auditors, they have to incarnate more people to try and...
They're getting a bit suspicious of her. She's saying, it takes time. Like, no, we'll all go. So then they do 9, which is 3 lots of free, because you always have to free, because then 2 watch the other 2 in all things. So the incarnates, there's a group, and they're just in these grey robes, which is what the auditors look like. And then she takes them to Jeremy, but she realises that they're suspicious of her, but she has the power, because she actually understands what this is, and none of them have done this before. Yeah. So they turn up, and she's like, to Jeremy's when they're about to finish the clock, and it's like, these are my accountants, she said. Some reading on her part having suggested that this might excuse most oddities. But they're also referred to as foreigners. That's why they seem odd. And they're also referred to as, various things are against their religion. And it's just interesting. You've got like 3 different things. It's like, these people are going to be very, very weird. So they're foreign and also religious and also accountants. So that's why they're weird.
Yeah, so because at one point...
also accounting being very much their whole thing.
Yeah. At one point, because she gets them to change how they look, because they've just got the grey robes.
It's like you have to do fashions.
You know, and she at one point basically goes, and really the only the women should wear dresses, because obviously
they've just copied stuff they've seen.
Yeah, so
they got no idea of norms, or they got no idea of social stuff. And then she says they have to have names, so they start assigning themselves names based on colour, and they've suddenly started learning about hierarchy.
Yes, which is a big deal for them.
Well, no, it wasn't before.
No, but now it's a huge deal.
Now it is.
And so
it's the monkey brain, probably.
Mr. White considers himself the most senior, because he whatever reason, you know.
Was it just that he incarnated maybe like a nanosecond earlier than the others? I don't know.
So he is Mr. White, and then all the rest of them gets colour names, and later on we get loads of different, and them attempting to basically find more names for. It's like they basically get told we're running out of names of colours, and they're like, there are millions. It's like, but those, you know, but we only have.
There aren't millions of names.
No.
Yeah. So I mean, if we talk about things, so they go to Jeremy's. Lady Lejeune can see a hammer, and she's like, they can't see me thinking about the hammer. If I edge towards the hammer, I can throw it at the clock and do it. Eagle's suspicious of these people. Eagle had already been suspicious of her, because at various points she didn't touch the ground. He can see a shadow under her foot, because she was still kind of floating, because she doesn't actually have to. It's like, is she in a body that's conforms to gravity, or is she still a floaty thing? I think that was still a bit somewhere in between early on. And he tells Jeremy, and Jeremy's a bit like, well, that we shouldn't hold that against people.
Yes.
It's also the fact that Jeremy kind of has a bit of a crush on her, and she kind of has a bit of a crush on it. It's sort of, neither of them obviously really have any idea what to do with any of that.
No.
So they all turn up, and they're like, we have a lightning storm, and then one of them was like, well, that's no problem, and he just creates a lightning storm, and Eagle's like, wow, because he can sense it, and that's also how Lobsang and Lucy are like, because they're now approaching Ankh-Morpork trying to find...
Well, they're in the midst of Ankh-Morpork, but at that point he's too close to the clock to be able to pin it down. So basically, at that point, they have to wait for the lightning strike. Yeah. You also have this time slicing they're doing as well. Yes.
There's just so much stuff in this book. So they can slice time, because they're just walking, basically, for most of it. But if you slice time, you can basically kind of like, you go into time so that you're moving faster than everything else. Yeah. And everything goes like a weird colour. It goes like blue.
Yes.
And then there's various things like that. So it looks like it's kind of like being a speedster, but it's actually quite a bit of effort.
Yeah. But then you get these valleys where you get closer to the sort of
there's like a black wall where if you slice too finely, you do die.
But as close you get, but there's these valleys which there's
one that you can get to where it's really hard. It's hard, and suddenly it gets easy. Is that like a reference to running or something?
No, it's a science. It's a science thing on.
You do the science things then.
Yeah, I'm trying. It's something that's sitting in the back of my brain going, I know this, but I can't put it to words. it's where you've got there's kind of this energy waveforms and things.
Okay, I need to know
science.
What that's about.
It's definitely
fine.
It's
a
definitely
reference
in science.
To science. Okay, that's fine.
It's just been a long time since I've done that sort of stuff, and it's quantum, very quantum.
And they've also got, which Q gave them, portable procrastinators. So they're basically little, on their backpacks with like little
personal
spinny things. So they basically, and again, they kind of describe it as like an air supply if you were scuba diving.
Yeah.
So it's that, but like for time. And then Lady Lejeune tries to throw the hammer. The guy from the Clockmakers Guild has turned up and is trying to get Jeremy to take his medicine. Jeremy won't. And then the clock starts and the bit in the line break goes tick and time stops. And this is partway through the book.
Yes.
There's still quite a bit of
and
book to go.
just as Lobsang is getting to the door.
Yeah. So then what we have is this weird timeless, and where everything's frozen except for those who aren't bound by time. So anthropomorphic personifications like Susan and a few others, Lutzi and Lobsang because they've got the procrastinators on their backs, and the auditors.
Yeah.
Weirdly, suddenly all incarnating.
I think it's because they realise there's things they don't know, because suddenly they realise with Lady Lejeune being human, there's things they don't know about being human, and they want to know about being human, and so this is why they start incarnating loads of them and then going off and trying to do research into.
Yes, they're basically into life basically.
Yeah, so they go to the museum, which is the first time we hear about the Ankh-Morpork Museum and Art Gallery. And they,
no, in fairness, I think Detritus did describe it to that guy from Quirm.
Yes, so they go there and they start breaking down the pictures into their component pigments.
They're looking at the pigments, going, "What makes this good?" And
so they can find what makes it art.
And the paintings are stuff like 3 large ladies with a single piece of cloth and man with big fig leaf. And they can't understand what makes that art, what makes that good. So they're like breaking down to pigment. At another point, they're like measuring paving slabs to see like what is the right size. Bearing in mind, Ankh-Morpork, you wouldn't have the uniform size of paving slabs we have.
No, I think it's also, it gets a bit creepy when Mr. White.
I mean, it's very creepy because you've got to think all of the people in the whole city, well, the whole disc actually, because it's described as being like a crystal statue. Which is that something you can get from the Emporium?
Possibly.
But
it's also like a wave that spreads out across the disc and eventually would be the whole universe.
So everything's frozen. You've just got a few people walking around. But then you've got all these kind of, I assume they're still mostly grey, kind of cloaked weirdos just wandering the place in like at least groups of 3 times bigger. And as well as discovering hierarchy, they also discover violence.
Yes, but so Mr. White suddenly realises about pain and
causing it on to others.
So basically he starts making his subordinates.
Well, he gets a cleaver.
Well, at one
and
point,
it's awful.
But at one point, he makes one of them puts their finger in the mouth of someone who's chewing.
Yeah,
and it bites down on their finger.
Yeah, just trying to figure out what things are, and they all kind of realise they don't like pain, or their bodies know, and they want to avoid it. But then, yes, he has a cleaver. It's a bit grim. So Susan and Lobsang kind of meet in the course of this, because what Lobsang did was he was almost at the door, but he had gone back to like check on Lutzi, even though Lutzi has told him, "No, you keep going." Yeah. So, and then Susan's one of the people who's who's still walking around and sort of finds them, goes, "You're not an auditor," and she's saying how much she hates them, and so they start being very violent to each other. And Susan says, "Well, they're acting human." Lobsang, says, "Oh, is casual decapitation acting human?" So Susan gave Lobsang a sad look. "You don't get out much, do you?" And then later he says something about he says something about something else they're doing, and like, "Oh, people can't act like this." She's like, "You don't know much history either, do you?" Now, admittedly, the thing that makes it less creepy is that the auditors do, once they effectively die, they do just discarnate into kind of a puff of grey.
Yeah.
So it's not quite as grisly as it could be, because they're kind of like their bodies have just been made up.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's still kind of grim.
Yeah.
But yes, and Susan actually says something like, "Oh, my grandfather says that if an intelligent creature takes a human shape, it starts to think human, form defines function."
Yes.
Which I think, again, there's been an ongoing investigation with death.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So we've got this, it must be a bizarre world, but, they start a bit of a guerrilla warfare.
Well, they know there's other things around, so they're trying to track that stuff down. Also, they know that Lady Lejeune is the... What do they call her? It's not the outcast or the heretic, or something like that. And she's in hiding. They're trying to find her. The other thing that Susan says about them is that they can create a perfect copy of anything, but they can't make anything that's new.
Yes.
And that feels quite relevant to, AI stuff or something, doesn't it?
Yeah.
A bit like, So it gives them like a machiney sort of, again, inhuman sort of feel.
But we get some fun interactions with the auditors in this, where they're trying to, where Lady Lejeune, where she's trying to hide out, has put up
in the museum
auditor traps, which is basically contradictory rules or things that, so there's some
pictures actually, isn't there?
Yeah, it's a sign that points right that says go left. There's like one that says beware of the elephant.
No, it says don't touch the elephant.
So just the elephant.
But there isn't an elephant. And so the problem is they start, they're like, well, again, it's that computer thing. It's like, here is a logic problem, and does not compute
it says
kind
duck.
of thing. Yeah.
It's just,
Yes.
So it's fun.
She's also discovered that she can kill them using chocolate.
Yes.
And I assume, now at this time, I seem to recall that there was a pudding you would get at restaurants called Death by Chocolate. So I assume that's what Pratchett is drawing on.
Yes.
I've definitely seen a sketch show from some comedy duo that was on the BBC that had a sketch that was also Death by Chocolate. It basically gives them a sensory overload.
Yeah.
Because she's like a dry bit of toast almost goes out. She also says that most of them will probably die in their dreams, because she almost did. Because the idea is the brain will dream and they won't know what's happening. Which again, is slightly grim.
Yeah. So you do get some fun bits where they're going through the city fighting with chocolates.
Yeah, I mean, because Lobsang knows where he needs to be, and then should we do the thing with Lobsang?
Yes,
Well, what we need to do first of all is explain what Def said to Susan about, because Def told Susan that there was someone involved that he couldn't see, and she's like, well, you can see everyone. He's like, no, this is someone who's outside of he didn't say jurisdiction, but someone like you. And the idea is that time, the personification of time, it says, time waits for no man, but perhaps she waited for one once. And the idea is that when the eternally surprised...
Yes.
Well, as Def says, and he gets quite embarrassed about it, she, married a human, had a son. And it's like, clearly we're not supposed to do this sort of thing.
No.
I mean, Def with his, adopting a child and then getting, that's...
that was all a bit...
Yes. So this is Susan's thing, is that Def is kind of... I mean, Susan's the loophole, but he's obviously not told her that. What he's dangled to her is someone like you that might need some help. And she's a bit like, oh, someone like me who is coming into this crazy life, but maybe I can explain to them and things. Yes, and then there's an ongoing bit where someone who we find out is when the eternally surprised keeps going to the door of Guy Fawkes at different points, but he's always the same. At one point the snow's on his shoulder, and then 20 years later it's still melting, and basically he's looking for the best midwife on the disc.
Nanny Og.
This is a nice bit where we get Nanny Og in her element as and he says, are you the best? She's like, well, there might be some people better than me, but I'd say basically I'm the best. But it starts out when she's new and she's just started both midwifery and witching.
Yeah.
And then later she's a bit older and she's now Mrs. Og. And in fact, that's it, Def's looking at this, isn't he? Because then the Raven says something about, Miss Og, then Mrs. Og. Is that some sort of country arrangement? And Def's like, oh, no, which is a matrilineal or something,
I think it's good because, you get to one point where she basically goes, are you the best? It's like, well, I could be better. It's like she should recognise that actually she's good. Yeah. But she could. There's. Yeah. And then at the end, he's there, and she's like, right, and she grabs her bag that she always keeps by the door, and she's like, right, let's go. Yes. So Susan eventually tracks her down because again, Def can't see, and in fact, at one point when Def collects the soul of the guy from the Procrastinator Hall who had 1,000, thousands, tens of thousands of years dumped on him, Def can see stuff moving, but he can't see who's doing it because he can't see Lobsang. You're like, ooh, that's interesting. But then you're also like, wait a second, Jeremy is the super time guy. What's going on? Susan goes to Nanny, and at that point it was only a few days ago? It's about most a week since she went and did it.
So the idea is that time lives in this kind of glass castle, but it's just room after room after room that all have glass walls, and there's the idea of this sad crying lady in there. And it's so interesting to see Susan and Nanny talk. Yeah. And it does sort of feel like Susan should have some female friends, or maybe be in some sort of group of witches, because that's just what she doesn't have. Again, it's that kind of slightly Smurfette thing in that, I mean, Susan's not in a group of guys, but she's just kind of on her own in what seems to be largely a masculine kind of thing. So Nanny says it's a difficult birth, it's her first time, she's obviously, and the man's really nervous and they're not much good at this kind of thing. And then she says, when push comes to shove, an old midwifery term, and you're like, Yep. Yeah. And Susan even goes, thank you, Mrs. Og, I'm never going to consider that the same way again. She has the baby, and then something happens, and then she can see herself delivering the baby, and she talks to herself, well, Mrs. Og, this is a turn up for the books. Yes, it is Mrs. Og. And then suddenly, there's one of her, again, something happens, and there's one of her, but she's holding two babies, and Susan's like, twins? And Nanny's like, no, twins is two souls born at the same time. This was one soul born twice. Yeah. So the reason Lobsang could always tell where he was supposed to be was because he was sensing Jeremy. Yeah. And when he first signs Jeremy, Susan's aware of this, but she's kind of a bit shy to tell him. And the fish says, oh, he's your brother. But then when they touch, it's like, no, he's you. Yes. And they were two half people. Yes. Which explains certainly why Jeremy, seems to have some difficulties. And Lobsang, he does all this stuff, but he's not that interesting as a character.
No, I think, and I think
he's kind of partly there as an audience insert, but yeah.
in some ways, the autistic coding of Jeremy, and then basically saying, well, actually, you're only half a person.
Oh yeah, that's not great.
Brilliant.
Is it? No.
I don't think that was intended as a.
No, I don't think so. I think it's more just he's hyper focused.
Yeah, and then Lobsang isn't that in. Yeah, he doesn't. He's a bit one-dimensional.
Lobsang seems a bit amoral because the whole thing where he keeps stealing stuff just to see if he could and stuff. But again, that's also not kind of great.
I mean,
he seemed more. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was racing people, and he seems a bit more social and stuff. And I mean, even so they kind of combine, and then he comes into his full power and says he still wishes to be called Lobsang because he says about not liking the name Jeremy even when he was Jeremy, and also Lobsang had happier memories. So which makes you wonder about what the Clocks Guild's like as opposed to the Thieves Guild. But Lobsang seemed a bit more personable, I guess. Again, not particularly deep as a Pratchett character, but for a lot of it he was an audience stand-in and who then did some impressive stuff. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, so we get the...
Because you kind of got the idea of this, a kind of chosen one or a lost son from quite early on, but then you've got these two guys being presented as could equally be it, and you don't necessarily realise that's what it is. I guess that kind of has covered both character and plot stuff.
Yes.
I had a particular theme I wanted to bring out, which was anything else you wanted, or
I mean, we need to talk Horsemen at some point.
That's true. Okay, yeah, we have not done. Oh yes, I didn't write Horsemen out. Okay, let's talk Horsemen.
So throughout the book,
that actually ties into the thing I'm going to talk about.
Death is off trying to bring the four Horsemen together because the world is ending. They must ride out. That is what happens. So
bear in mind we've not seen these guys since Sorcery.
Yes,
and there is a reference very briefly to Sorcery because it says something about them riding out on like small apocalypses, maybe, but it says even apocryphal ones. I'm like, that's the Sorcery reference.
Yes. So he's doing getting the band back together. So he's going to individually was talking to each of them, and you're finding them that they're anthropomorphic personifications. They're off doing human type things in a way. So
War's married a Valkyrie, and so there's now Mrs. War, and she seems very joyless, and it's a bit of a problematic stereotypy trope.
Yeah.
Because this idea that War will be like, oh, I'd like to ride out, and she's like, no, you don't, darling. It's like, darling, do I like meat? No, you don't, darling. It gives you your trouble. It's kind of this idea of a very henpecked guy, but like everything the wife's doing is like, oh no, it's for your own good, and it's sort of this idea that, men can't take care of themselves and they need a woman around to make them, but, isn't she awful while she's doing that? Death doesn't think. At one point, Death thinks something about not ever considered storing his memory in somebody else's head, because every so often War will be like, do I like this? And she's like, no, darling. It's like, do I? She's like, no, you like this. So it's like almost like War isn't fully a person anymore. He's just been kind of kept aside, and he's treated like he's ill, and Death's like, but you're not ill because you're immortal. So it's sort of this idea that she's almost like made him be ill or enfeebled. It's an odd little. And look, I can't say that this kind of thing never happens, because I have occasionally seen that, but with people who were actually ill, like the person who's the caregiver then becomes kind of everything, has to do everything, and then that's the dynamic that can exist. I think it's often. I think this is just falling into the kind of like henpeck kind of Famine and pestilence are a bit more brief, but they're also doing things. And they don't seem that bothered.
They're just doing little things. They're not really interested in riding out as a big thing.
And then I guess we come to what happens to Lucy. He meets Ronnie.
So throughout we have seen Ronnie Soak, the milkman, delivering milk occasionally to Igor and Jeremy. So that's how we first meet him. But when time stops, it doesn't seem to bother him.
He's still doing his milk round.
Yeah. And his milk, and when Lucy wakes up there because Ronnie rescues him from
So he's in the dairy.
It's an interesting dairy. It's
It's big.
Yeah.
And very cold.
So obviously this is a character who,
This is somebody who's outside of time, and that's fine.
Yeah.
So it just occurred to me that in Mort, when Mort collects one version of the abbot, and he says, you're not the usual guy, have you taken on the round? And it's just occurred to me, what, like a milkman?
Yeah, slightly different.
But yes, somebody who has the round.
Yeah.
So clearly Ronnie is not human. Clearly Ronnie is something. And in fact, at one point, Susan. Well, that's it, because they can't find Lucy, but they see some yogurt, and Susan's like, oh, well, Ronnie has him.
Yeah.
He'll be fine.
Yes.
So clearly Ronnie's somebody that Susan knows, so he's clearly somebody who's about. And then he's talking to Lucy, and, can you guess who I am?
Yes, it's obviously, having a bit of a grumble about kind of being left behind.
Well, he puts one finger up.
Yes.
And Lucy's like, that seems rude. But the idea is he's the fifth one.
Yeah.
So, yes, so the idea is that Ronnie is the horseman who left before they got famous.
Yes. Doing the old Beatles thing.
Pete Best.
Yeah, doing the Beatles thing. Telling Lucy about, how he left due to
creative
differences. But no one knows his name.
Well, he wants Lucy to guess his name.
Yes.
It's like this whole thing, and Lucy's like, he wants me to get... Also, Lucy's a bit like, this guy is clearly incredibly powerful, and so Lucy's being quite careful.
Yeah, which is sensible.
And then they go out on the wagon for reasons I don't quite recall. And then he sees the name...
Because he was going to drop him off.
Oh, he was going to drop him off back where he was.
Yeah.
And then Lucy, they go past a funeral parlour or something. It's got a black window, so you can see the reflection of
the cart, which has got Ronnie Soak.
Ronnie Soak, milk and dairy established.
Yeah.
No date.
So
also the fact that Ronnie was able to get yak's milk like Yutzi had when he was young.
Yes.
So he looks in the window and he sees it. And then he said, another reference, he goes, pleased to meet you. I can guess your name.
Yes.
It's like, oh, yeah, sympathy for the devil. So it turns out Ronnie Soak, if you spell Soak backwards, it's chaos.
Yes. So
with a K.
the old-fashioned chaos of... And I think, that's
I mean, if you think about it, a lot of creation mythology starts with, there was chaos, and then... Yeah. This thing happened, whatever the thing is. Sometimes it's an egg, sometimes it's light, sometimes it's things moving apart, sometimes it's temperatures doing a thing, but there's always this early thing that is chaos. Then, because he knows who he is, Lucy's very much talking him up, bigging him up, massaging his ego a little bit. But he eventually convinces Ronnie that, hey, maybe you can go, and if this is the end, because Ronnie's been like, oh, I'm going to keep doing the round, I'm going to go into ice cream and stuff.
Yes.
And Lucy's like, who will buy the ice cream? Time has stopped. There are no customers.
Yes. Ronnie's sort of there about the old school chaos. It's just not the same anymore. But Lucy's basically saying this is a change from more of a digital numbers and logic.
Well, it's kind of like chaos. So Lucy says, well, you could rebrand as chaos, CH. And then it's what's maths? It's the math stuff.
Yes,
and then he says the abbot really loves it. And
yeah.
He refers to very complicated maths that I don't know. In fairness, I don't think Lucy knows either, so that's fine. Yes, so there's that chaos effect and all this sort of stuff. So chaos theory, I don't know. But again, it's the more kind of mathsy modern.
Version of chaos.
Like maybe it's chaos with a K who's got a suit.
Yeah.
And then it's a CH.
And Ronnie does eventually find his ice sword.
Well, that's what keeps dairy so cold because it's
which is
so
interesting
cold.
Because the most chaotic thing is a hot gas. The most ordered thing is like ice.
But it's not ice. But the point is cold is pouring off of it. It's going... It's that thing where it goes... Well, you know about the movie, cold's an absence of heat, but the point is this has cold...
Energy.
Fine. But this has cold pouring off of it as though it was heat.
But anyway, so he gets his sword and rides out...
He has a chariot also.
Yes.
Because the others are all on horse, but he has a horse that pulls a chariot, and he has a helmet, which is quite often drawn as a hoplite-looking helmet.
Yeah. So, so he goes off and joins the horsemen, who actually do get together in the end. Death
turned up as he was supposed to, because he's always big on duty.
Yeah, Death rides out and faces off against the auditors.
Yeah, so the point is that as the disc is like a crystal below... There's these mass ranks of billions of auditors, and Death's trying to talk them out of it. And then there's a whole prophecy thing, but I think we'll get to that in a bit. Shall we go to the bit I was going to talk about?
Yeah.
So, in many ways, this book is doing a bit of a rerun of Good Omens, which
specifically the
certain parts of it. There's a few things, and I read Good Omens before I read this, as I mentioned before. So. The end is coming. The end of the world is coming soon. That whole sense that somebody says, the world will end by Tuesday.
Yes.
So, and that's, a big thing with Good Omens, that kind of feeling. And again, you've got factions who are wanting to either stop or encourage the end of the world. So you've got these, some groups fighting against it. Some are actually no, we want this to happen. Something that could be the Tibetan stuff, because in Good Omens there's the whole thing where Adam reads these various fortune time type things. There's lots of stuff about the secret masters of history.
Yep.
History months. There's stuff around Tibet. It's this kind of new agey, kind of late 80s, early 90s, new agey kind of mishmash of stuff. And yes, the horseman. So the idea that death is always the exception, because he is the great inevitability, that you can be something different. So at one point, Ronnie says a little bit snidely, death is death, of course, but, you know, the others are just like sniffles or localized crop failure and spots.
Yeah.
You know, the idea that they did small, and again, it's the idea they did small gigs and building up a bit. And you've got the idea that the horsemen can be other things, which again was a whole theme with the kind of bikers of the apocalypse in Good Omens, where you had some actual Hell's Angels join them and come up with different names of things. The prophecy. So there's an idea that there's an omnium prophet who prophesied the end of the world and said the horsemen would ride out, which is why Death's like, no, we have to do this. And Ronnie sort of talks about it a bit. It's like, oh, this guy, he says, oh, there will be an angel clothed all in white who will read from the great iron book. And it also mentions, oh, and then there are like multicolored giraffes and syrupy things. And it's like, I think Sheshan is like, this guy was on quite a lot of mushrooms, which again, the idea of prophecy and stuff and somebody being a bit of a mad prophet or maybe being on some stuff is definitely a thing that gets mentioned in Good Omens. I think that's more about, is it St. John?
Yeah. What's
quite funny is that when they're above the disc, the angel clothed all in white does turn up with his iron book, and Death's like, no, you're written out. And the angel's like, well, I'm sorry, what? What, like the syrupy things? You wait for thousands of years.
Yeah.
And there's also the fact that at one point his pages are stuck together and he uses his halo to like kind of as a weld, it's kind of like weld the iron pages open to see what's happening. The thing is that I think because the Good Omens thing was in my head at that point, I kind of now imagine the angel, because at one point they say angel clothed in white. He's like, no, it's clothed, because it's got an accent over the E. So I now imagine him as a slightly prissier and less kind of human version of Aziraphale.
Yeah.
Particularly the Michael Sheen version. Yeah. The thing with the ranked masses of auditors is reminiscent of a very brief bit in Good Omens when there's a brief sense of the ranked masses of angels and demons kind of waiting just beyond reality to fight.
Yeah.
Because the point is the horsemen do actually start fighting the auditors, so there's all this stuff happening above the disc. But that, I think there actually is a battle, whereas in Good Omens it was averted. It also had occurred to me that Susan is not unlike Anathema Device.
Yes.
Professional descendant.
Yes.
In that her whole thing is being descended from, you know, quite a powerful person.
Yeah.
And also they're both quite kind of, maybe not quite calculating, but quite cool, practical sort of women.
Yeah.
And both younger than you'd think from how they act.
Yeah.
So that's various things that he did in Good Omens. And now he's kind of like taking a bit of a rerun at some of those themes and doing stuff again. Which is how I know I read this after I read Good Omens.
Yeah, it was fun in Good Omens. It was fun here, so yeah.
I think the other thing we're going to talk about is how this is the last of the Death sub-series.
It is. I mean, obviously, you know.
I mean, again, whenever we do one of these, we don't know if it's planned to be the last
one. Well, I think given that there is a reference in the Making of Discworld book about notes on another Susan book that was planned.
Yeah.
I don't think this was planned to be the last one, but obviously, yes, it ended up being the last one.
You know how when we first were doing this, we're like, what a big good starting point, and now we're like, this is the last of this particular strand.
Yeah.
This is now the second last.
Yes.
One, not the second, not the penultimate.
Yeah, because it was the witch.
The witches. Yeah, well, that carnation of the witches. Yeah.
But in this situation, Death turns up. Death is in every book, but you know we don't get as much of a.
It's not that sub-series anymore.
No, and Susan doesn't show up again.
No. Do we feel that Susan is given something that's kind of a happy ending?
Once again, we get the will they, won't they, love interest male that doesn't really do anything.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a theme of Susan, isn't it? So obviously in Soul Music, she had a crush on Imp/Buddy and was helping him. The idea is that, you know, she's a teenage girl and he was the music of Roxy Star. So that's a bit of a thing, but not in like a shifty sort of way.
No, but I mean, the
problematic area.
The end of that, you know, kind of could have implied
it sort of implied, the thing about the guy down the chip shop, looks elvish, but nothing kind of comes of that, it seems. And it seems like Susan's partly helping him potentially out of displaced grief, partly out of it's not fair as well. In Hogfather, maybe kind of bilious.
A little bit, but obviously, I think bilious as someone who is, like Lobsang Jeremy, like her, someone different. I
mean, he's a god, but a god that only just got created.
Yeah, but he's...
Well, this starts the theme of her. Well, I say theme, there's only two. Her kind of like pushing him around a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, she argues with Buddy, but it's much more equal footing. Whereas in this and Hogfather, she's like the person who knows what's happening, who has experience.
Yeah.
Because she meets Lobsang first, and she just pushes him around and is quite stern. And even though like Death, holds out someone like you, and it's mentioned it's the son.
Yeah.
And so there's a sense that she's someone like me that, that she's compelled by that idea. But I think she's one of these people who almost won't let herself feel.
Yeah.
She won't let herself get sentimental. In fact, she tells him, "Oh, you hero," and he's like, "Oh, thanks." No, wait a second, because she's like, "Why would you try and save one old man when all of time was on the line?"
So I think that again is dangled as and even at the end when when Lobsang is
when he becomes his whole self, he kind of keeps manifesting as a load of like blue twinkles, and she actually goes with him into the clock, and then he meets his parents.
She's his anchor.
Yeah, she's the one who's anchoring him to the world. Death Rat gets caught up in there somewhere and is kind of left behind, poor Squeak, but there we go. Yeah. And so she meets when they're eternally surprised, and Lobsang gets to meet his mother, and then basically the idea is he is now time. His mother has decided to retire with his father, and he's now time.
Yes.
And the idea is, she says, because you're like me, and it's actually, no, I'm not like you, because the point is Susan has adopted Death powers, so it's kind of a weird inheritance in that her mother was adopted and I guess raised in Death's domain for a while, and her father was there too, and got hit by Death. It's not very biological, whereas the point is that Lobsang is half human, half time.
Yes.
So he's a bit more, and then there's all the stuff that he can see beyond, and so he becomes like a different thing. Like Lady Lejeune, when her and Susan fight together, Susan points out how her name is a bit silly and says, why don't you become called Unity? So then she becomes Unity. And there's a sad thing, Unity, I mean, it's quite sad, really. She's using chocolate as a weapon, but she won't eat it herself. And then she has her own, basically, very elaborate suicide.
She wants to die, that is what she...
Because she says she's insane. And it's this horrible idea that she's like, I'm a broken, not right thing. And again, it's kind of that she's between two things. She's not really an auditor anymore, but she's not quite a human because she wasn't raised as such. But whereas, Susan and Lobsang seem to have been all right with, they're managing with that. She's just like, no, I'm insane, I can't live.
Yeah.
And that's actually, I think I realised this time how sad that is.
It is, because...
With his dairy connections, Chaos basically creates for her I think, swimming pool-sized vat of various different chocolates and fillings, and she, basically...
Death by chocolate.
And then she says to Death, well, why are you still here? And he's like, for you. And then that sort of shows that she was actually alive, because now she...
Yeah, she had a very small... So she had a very small lifetimer, but she had a lifetimer.
But she had, But so at the very end, Susan sneaks into the stationery cupboard to sneakily have a chocolate. Because it's been a difficult time.
Yeah, it's been.
It's quite funny because she's got chocolate in her mouth and stars start, little, the gold stars start flying around her, and she thinks it's the death of rats, and it's like Lobsang, and you're like, oh, but then it just stops.
Yes. And
it's that thing where Pratchett's always a bit arm's length of romance.
Yes.
The suggestion here is that there's something, but we never get to see it.
No.
And it did start with him feeling quite bullied by her, I think. But it was an emergency situation. She did have more experience. So
I think it could be. I think it could be a nice. Obviously, if we just presume that.
Just presume it all goes nicely.
Yeah. I think.
Which Susan herself would tell us was sentimental and silly.
Yes. Well.
But secretly, she would also hope for such.
Yes. As an ending goes, it's a solid.
Yeah.
It's a shame we don't get to see Susan further into the series, but that's the way these things go.
Yes.
It is a bit of a cliffhanger, but you can infer enough to...
Well, it's not a cliffhanger, is it? It's just a...
Okay, but you don't know.
You almost got happily ever after, but you're not quite there yet.
I mean, I think the thing is there is quite a lot of funny references and things in here.
Yeah.
We could be,
there's various bits we've, just brushed over, but there's a lot going on.
There's a lot. Lucy is teaching Lobsang various things, including going through a list of martial arts.
Or even though it's history monks, they still seem to have a martial arts type thing, and there's all these different dojos and gyms, and some of them are supposed to be quite scary and hardcore. But I think the idea is that you're being taught martial art to marshal your resources and movements in order to become good at the actual time slicing and that stuff.
So we have some amusing martial arts. We have Okie Dokie, Shiitake, Upsy Daisy, No Can Do, Tongue Pie, and Deja Vu.
Only now that you said it have I understood what tongue pie was. I think I was reading that as a different thing. Yes, because they're all written not quite like that. So yes, I mean, Deja Vu kind of makes sense because the whole Deja Vu. Yeah.
And so those are just fun, and we also have the Garden of Five Surprises,
and there's various things like statues that do a thing, and a bridge that throws you off, and
and the last,
but there's only 4 of them.
Yeah. The 5th surprise is just him with a cheap moustache and glasses.
Well, it's the Groucho Marx thing.
Yeah, and it's like, it never said it was a good one.
Because Lobsang, before he goes to visit Susan, goes to visit Lucy. Yeah. It's interesting, actually, because Lucy turns up and he's time, and they're the history monks. So he's basically like their god now, or something. It wasn't quite exactly that, and I don't think Buddhism's exactly that. I don't know enough about it. But yeah,
he's the manifestation of
time.
Yeah.
They have this thing where we haven't finished your apprenticeship. So he has to go and sweep.
Yes.
And Lucy's be like, but you know what I'm going to say because your time. He's like, no, I'm trying to keep a bit of humanity.
They want to make him a
the
novice.
highest monk. Yeah, well, no more than novice. They want to be a full,
Yeah, and he goes, no, I will just be
I was apprenticed as a sweeper. Lucy has at one point seen because there's always cherry blossoms because it's the same day and it's obviously a spring day. There's always stuff about cherry blossoms in the valley. And at one point, just in his head, Lucy thought, we never get any cherries the same day. I realised this time he never says it out loud.
Yeah.
Because then Lucy's a bit like, it's like usually an apprentice should give the master a gift when he ends his apprenticeship. And Lucy's like, well, you don't have to give me anything. There's nothing you can give me. But then because he's time, he basically makes there be cherries.
Yeah.
Which is nice.
Yes. Nice little touch. I think this is a great fun book. It's
quite meaty. It's got a lot to it.
Got some interesting concepts about time.
Tell from all the stuff we've been saying.
And it's riffing on various things, to say martial arts movies. Yeah, just a lot of good fun stuff. Perhaps not as, I think Hogfather is the high water mark for me.
This one doesn't have that mythic stuff.
No.
It's much more concept. That's why at the start I kind of said it felt a little bit more science fiction, although it's... I mean, people often say Pratchett's quite science fictional in the fantasy universe. So.
Yeah, I think it's got some great fun things. The idea, the time ideas. Yeah, we could go on for ages about this, but you don't want to listen to us waffle about that because you've already listened to us waffle for long enough.
Fair enough, yes.
So I think we'll bring it to an end there. Next time, as we mentioned at the start, it'll be The Last Hero, which will be interesting to do, a largely graphical...
I mean, we did Eric, and we didn't particularly like that, but that I don't think was
I don't think that's
format.
anything to do with the format, no.
No.
I don't think I've read this one for a while. So.
No, it does bring back some characters I didn't enjoy, though, so we might have to see how that is.
Yeah,
that I think would be interesting. But I know that there's a lot more of a cast of characters than that, so we'll see how we go.
Thank you very much for listening. We shall catch you next time.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Dining Table Discworld. You can find us on Facebook at www.facebook.com/Dining Table Discworld. You can also find us on BlueSky at dtdiscworld. All our other contact information and credits for our music can be found in our show notes. Thank you for listening again, and we'll see you in our next episode.